Welcome to The Bridge, a podcast for dental professionals featuring the insights and expertise of fellow dental professionals. Let's welcome our host, Stephen Kuza.
Hello, Bridge Dental podcast listeners. This is Steve Kuza, your resident dentist financial advisor, and we are back for season number 3. Hope you were able to catch up on all the previous episodes. And if you are tuning in on the podcast right now on the radio or your iPhone, I should say, I have a great guest in front of me, special guest, Dr. Tiffany Danyal, one of our most downloaded podcasts. She is back, not to talk about any semi-trucks or dental practices. We're actually just going to talk about the business side of dentistry today. New format for this season. And we are going to sort of run this as a radio hour. But we're going to do anywhere between 15 to 30-minute episodes where we ham and egg the business side of dentistry in this particular episode. And Tiffany owns several practices. I thought she'd be a great guest to bring back on. So Tiffany, hello. How you doing?
Hi.
Good to see you.
Doing well. How about you, Steve?
I'm doing really well. And I know, so how many practices do we have at this moment in time on June 7th, 2023?
Well, there are 9. And I have purchased merger practices. I've done 2 mergers to help grow my 9 practices. So we're at 9 today.
That's amazing. And you've done that within how many years of being in dentistry?
Oof. Well, I've been in dentistry now 11.
Okay.
And the 9 since I ventured out on my own, it's been about 7 years.
Okay. So I would, I'd call you an expert in this topic, this business side of dentistry. I heard a great line today. It's like anything worth doing is worth doing poorly because you learn, right? So if that means you're trying new things, you're learning, you're growing. And that statement really hit me hard in the sense of like, what am I doing well? Great. But what am I trying to do poorly because I need to get better or learn? And so that was just an interesting statement. And I think so many dentists are scared to venture out. I shouldn't use the word scared. I think I should use the word like there's this understanding of good risk versus bad risk that they have this hesitation. That's the word I'm looking for, to jump out in the business side of dentistry, whether they're an associate or whether they own a practice and looking to get the second practice. So,
right.
What do you think about that? Do you feel that or have that understanding with maybe some of the associates that you work with? What's your feedback on that?
I very often get associates that tell me their long-term goal is to own their own practice. And there is definitely hesitation, especially there's always circumstances that change. And so it's just, if you can accept that the environment is always going to be changing. And again, your quote is really great. You can learn and make mistakes while you're taking that risk. That risk is worth taking, and just know you will make those mistakes. And that's how you understand and become a better business person.
Right. And essentially then it's not a mistake, it's education. Right. So
absolutely. That's how I learned. I didn't go to business school, but I think that I've become a really good businesswoman. Right.
I would take that education all day with 9 practices. I think that's awesome. So, when you were getting practice number 1, maybe what was some of the hesitations, if you can even go back and remember? It's like, what were some of the hesitations that you had? Was it money related? Was it just not, maybe you didn't have the know-how? Like I'm thinking, do I got to borrow? How do I borrow $1 million? Like, maybe was that part of it?
Oh, I remember that I didn't know much, but I didn't know what I didn't know at that time. I look back at the person who started with 1 and realized I did not know a lot of things. So networking was really big for me because I had to learn from bankers, from people like you. Who do I call? Getting recommendations for good lawyers, just those people that taught me, and I asked questions. When I bought number 1, I think the biggest hesitation I had was I don't know how to establish an entity. I don't know how to evaluate if a bank deal is good. I just wanted to get approved and wanted to close. And then from that point, what do I have to take over? Am I missing something? How does the insurance stuff work? Am I going to make some big mistakes that could compromise my license? Like, those are the fears I had, but then I just pulled the trigger and did it.
That's interesting because one thing I do remember about you, and to this day, you are a really good note taker. And you do come prepared to ask questions. So you would come to our meetings like, all right, Steve, I got 2 pages of questions. I'm like, all right, great. This is going to be, a great meeting. This is going to be well thought
That's
out.
Funny.
But I do notice, even if you're not wired that way, natural note taker, super organized, that's okay. But my advice would be, or my suggestion would be to those people, if you're not wired to be super detailed, that's okay, but be prepared for that meeting you're about to walk into. If you don't know the questions to ask, call a Tiffany, Danielle, call a mentor and say, what should I ask a banker?
Exactly.
Just to even ask, and then I can report back to you the information they gave me, Yeah.
I mean, simple things that I get asked for all the time. Personal financial statement. I remember when I received the request to fill one out, I was like, what is this? I don't know how to fill this out. And I look at it now and I kind of chuckle because I do them in my sleep now, but I had to sit down with a banker who gave me an hour of time and said, I'll teach you what you're reading.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to fill one out. And the following year, I sat with her again, said, all right, I think I got it, but I need you to just be here in case there's something I get stuck on. So I learned from the bankers. They taught me. So you don't be afraid to ask the people you're working with, and don't be embarrassed, because you'd be surprised how many people don't know what these things are.
Man, that is such a good one, a personal financial statement. And that's kind of the idea of this season of the podcast is like, all right, let's go into we don't know where we're going to head. We got a high level topic and let's dive into some nitty gritty stuff. But the personal financial statement, and the bankers, they're dealing with so many people on a daily basis, but they just throw that out there. They just put it in an email like, hey, Tiffany, we need your PFS. You're like, what is a PFS? Yep. And you're almost embarrassed to reply back. Like, is that going to
yeah.
So
yeah. Oh my gosh, I felt so stupid saying, I don't know how to do this. And I remember the first one, it was for 3 months, I hadn't responded. And the banker's like, where's your PFS? And I finally said, I don't know how to do this.
And by the way, your first one is your easiest one. It's like, I got 10 grand in the account, $500,000 in student debt. That's my PFS. But
I know. Now it's more complicated. And
it's more complex.
This is just a pain in my butt, but I do it.
Best way I guess I would describe it from a financial planning side, the PFS is it's a summary of your assets and liabilities and your total net worth. But and often what's confusing about it is you think it has to be this robust document. It is a complex document because it has all the categories of potential assets or potential liabilities, but that doesn't mean you have all those assets and liabilities. Just fill out what you actually have, right? But it can be overwhelming. So
it definitely was. I remember that was the first thing that made me feel like, oh, business owner. That's a tough thing.
The PFS thing. So, we'll put a star on the PFS. So personal financial statement, good thing to research, understand, look up, Google, whatever you do to research nowadays. And having a personal financial statement probably is one, it's good for your dental practice because if you need a loan, they're going to ask for it. So to update it once a year or every 6 months, would you agree is probably a good thing?
Every bank that I've worked with has requested it annually after I've even had the loan closed.
Okay. So they want updates.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're easy to update, right? You just got to dial back in. What are the numbers and save the copy you previously had. Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy. I actually created what's called the business debt schedule because I have so many entities that when I get requests for updates, I just attach that because I constantly update that. Otherwise, it'd take me a long time to repeatedly put that together.
That's smart. That's very smart. So now let's go back to some of this business side of it. As you're looking for practices, you own multiple. They're not all the same. You didn't buy the same practice over and over. Right. You might be building a theme of a similar business model in your practice. But what are the different types of dental practices you acquired, whether you were looking for them or not? You talked about like this couple merger practices. Give us some ideas behind that of what were some different practices you purchased.
I have this theme of practice that I like to buy, usually a retiring dentist selling their practice. And what I like about those are the retiring dentists limit their practice to very basic general dentistry. They're also they're taking it easy. They're purposely holding back because they're tired. So even with their restorative skills, they'll hold off on doing a crown, or they'll hold off on doing restorations because they just don't want to. They're in retirement mode. So when I find a practice, I like to buy it from a retiring dentist, not necessarily a young person who's moving out of state. Maybe that practice is already built up and there's not much room for improvement. So the older retiring dentist, that's my thing. I like to be in a good area. And by good area, I mean locations that are not what everybody would necessarily want, maybe the outskirts of Metro Detroit, but where I can drive to within an hour, because there's a lot of room for growth. A lot of dentists are not willing to drive past a 15 or 20 minute, I guess, radius. So, if you're limited to, let's say, Troy or Sterling Heights or Birmingham, these places are very highly desired by everybody. So I try to avoid, if I can, the areas that are saturated at this point.
Okay.
But if you saw my list of practices, I have one in Shelby Township that's a pretty saturated area. That one was a very hard one to grow. That's why I decided to buy a merger. So marketing can be very expensive when you're in these really desired places. Is really why I prefer.
Is it because you're fighting for patients?
Yeah, and marketing. If you go on internet, it's a lot more expensive. If you try to do print, you have to hit a lot more households. It's very expensive to target, and the price per patient goes up versus my Fenton office. I get new patients very easily. Okay. So I try to find the retiring dentist practices. Those usually revenue somewhere between $350 and $550 a year. So that's where they cap. So those are overlooked by the big DSOs, because DSOs are looking for really robust practices that can start cash flowing right away. I look at it the other way, where I'm looking at the ones that no one wants, and then I flip them and make them bigger right away.
Right. Especially with the cosmetic or restorative work that you know how to do or apply to that patient base, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So let's touch on a couple things there. You mentioned, you look for harder to reach areas to drive to, right? Practices a little bit on the outskirts. I mean, everything is like designed for us to be within 15 minutes. So that's interesting, because it's like, I live here. I'm going to look for a practice within 15 to 20 minutes of where I live, because that's where I want to do everything. But you're saying I'm willing to drive. That's a desirable trait for a potential practice. The other part is an undervalued practice. So good patient base, it's not producing what it could, because that retiring dentist potentially is not maximizing the value. Is that kind of what, so you almost have that thought process going into it?
For sure. Okay. I mean, think about this. The older dentists, I've never met one that had an iTero machine. I have an iTero machine in all of my offices. I scan patients. I can show them different things that they haven't seen before, like their bite. Can talk to them about things like Invisalign, which, again, retiring dentists are not getting into Invisalign. They're trying to phase out of dentistry, not commit themselves for a year or two in orthodontic.
Right.
Things like placing implants. A lot of practices that I bought, they didn't really have a strong period department. So right there, recall was heavy, but they weren't necessarily saying, hey, you've turned into a periodontal patient. We need to do a scaling replanning and bring you in more frequently. Large amalgam filling, where general dentists that were going into retirement, they don't necessarily say, let's do a crown here. They just watch it. And again, I'm not looking at making things up. I'm just bringing the more, I guess, fresh approach with this new type of dentistry that I'd say has developed in the last decade or so.
Okay. Yeah. And it's profitable side too. I mean, it takes work to learn and do and execute, and you got to invest, you got to buy machinery, technology. Right. Staff has to be trained differently, but it can be profitable if it's executed correctly.
Oh, absolutely. I've always taken a practice and done anywhere from 50 to 100% more instantly what that previous dentist was doing.
That's
and
amazing.
It's not even anything, again, it's not aggressive diagnosing. It's using intraoral camera to show patients, blow something up, scanning, showing them as much as they can see. So they're even digital x-rays, those little films. How can you show a patient and educate the patient on what we're looking at versus the computer screen that blows up their tooth? And
right. And I'm an educated patient now, I must say. I know when I walk into that office, I've talked to so many dentists. I know what I'm looking for. No, you're right, though. You're right.
I'm not surprised. I bet you could come in and play doctor for a day.
I probably could, just with language alone. I could probably pay high-level doctor for a day, right? Between patients. So too funny. So let's talk about the marketing angle. You brought that up, and marketing can be expensive. What's your philosophy on marketing in general? Is it, do I just got to hang the new sign on the door and rebrand, or is it worth outreach, or the internet outreach? Is there text message outreach? Like, what do you feel about your marketing budget in general? And then, what's like your philosophy on marketing? And then what are you actually executing on in the practices?
So marketing is one of those things, trial and error. Just like you were saying earlier with that quote, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes not knowing anything about different aspects of marketing. There's print, there's internet marketing, there's marketing to your own patient pool, there's networking within the community to get your brand out there so that people can refer. So marketing there's such a huge opportunity to market in every aspect, but you have to pick what makes most sense. Let's say you want to be conservative in your spending. Maybe you do some print pieces, or maybe you just get everybody's email addresses in the practice. And if you're doing digital patient records, you can email to those patients and tell them about specials or things that you're offering, Invisalign days, implant specials, or if you refer a friend, a $20 Amazon card. That could be a very easy way to market initially without spending a lot. But then you can start setting aside a budget. Let's say it's internet spending. You can hire companies to update your listing so that when you're Google searched, it says your practice name and not the previous owner's name. I've seen a lot of doctors who take over a practice, and I'm like, I wonder if they knew to do that. And I still can't find them on Apple Maps or on Google Maps. So that's step one on internet marketing and budgeting, search engine optimization, those kind of things. A lot of dentists will say, oh yeah, I pay this person for search engine optimization. And then I ask, you know what that is? And they don't. So know what you're spending your money on too.
Yes.
Ask those questions. And then you can, again, this is a gradient thing. You can then expand your budget. Let's say as your practice grows, if you have more funds, you can try Google ads or Facebook ads, or a lot of people are using social media now. You're going to use social media, invest on courses to be better at taking pictures. Like, don't take ugly pictures and think your practice is going to grow.
Well, it's kind of like, Tiffany, what's your website? Instead, people are like, Tiffany, what's your Instagram for your office? And you're like, okay, yeah, it's easier just to go on Instagram or any social media platform, Facebook, etc. And I can kind of get a live, almost like a 3D look at the office, because there's videos, I can, I know what's going on. It's on demand that day, where the website is so static.
Yeah,
TV.
It's true. I mean, I only use my website now for submission forms. It's so if a patient finds me, they click the link and it sends them to my website for them to submit a contact request. I mean, or they can schedule their own appointments online.
But your current
But
event, I should say, is probably done via social media, right? Like, here's what's going on in Tiffany's office today or whatever. Or even the Invisalign
well,
days, I'm sure you're broadcasting out even on there, right?
yeah, I'll admit I'm always learning, and I'm still learning the whole social media side, getting ready to launch a big effort on the social media side for marketing purposes. So yeah,
Sure.
I'm trying to get into that, keep up with the times. Yeah.
Right, it's moving so
I feel like I'm getting old because I'm not as strong at social media. So I learned all the other things, but now I'm, trying to learn the next best thing.
Well, I think
But marketing is very important for sure.
the two things I want to end on. So number one,
Yes.
I'm gathering you believe in marketing in some capacity, in any capacity.
Yeah.
But so once you get the patients, two things I want to end on are, what are we doing to keep them, like retain patients within your business, in your dental practice, and then also maybe we'll wrap up with maybe what's some trends we're seeing in dentistry that you're kind of staying ahead. Yeah, the social media side is one you're diving into more, but what are you almost being proactive on? I'd be curious to know. But what are you doing so you increase the patient base, you maximize the current patient base, but then how do you retain those patients? Are you doing anything in particular, anything special, or what does that look like?
Honestly, retention is if the practice is running well, where you have good staff to greet the patient, you have an efficient protocol where patients are brought back, the staff knows what the steps are for the new patient, and just gathering as much information from the patient ahead of time so that their actual appointment goes smooth and doesn't waste time. That's one thing, keeping them educated, using technology to really impress them and wow them on how up to date we are in our office. And then at the very end, we really push for reviews, and the reviews are helpful because I see them all, and we can do a quality control type thing with those reviews. We either respond, "Thank you for the great review," or "I'm sorry, things weren't perfect," or "Could we do to make it better?" That way we are on top of what the customer or the patient demands, what they need. And then we ask for referrals. That's, keep us growing. That's how I retain them. Bring your family to us.
Being in the referral industry, asking as you know,
True.
I've asked you for introductions in the past, but there's no better source of marketing than just asking for an introduction and getting endorsed to that potential person or persons. I agree with that 1,000%. It's the best form. It's like one-on-one marketing. It's the most efficient way to grow your business.
Absolutely.
So, and when you have a good practice, people are like, absolutely, I would love to introduce,
Yeah, right. So hire good people, have good systems. And again, a new person getting into dental ownership or dental practice ownership. Remember that these things I'm still working on. They're not going to be established from day one. Don't
Sure.
feel that you have to get from, I'm this new business owner, I have to be where Tiffany seems to be for me to be a business owner. It took me years to advance and progress. And I'm still, again, learning, implementing new ideas, and constantly evolving. You have to be willing to do that.
If I see any mistake young professionals make, whether it's in my line of work or yours, it is the impatience, understanding the work that's going to go in, and it is going to be hard, and that's okay. That's all right. That's perfectly okay. You're going to do things really, really well and better than your peers, and then you're going to do some things that are not so great. And that's all part of the process, right? What people forget or don't see is, for a lot of the veteran practice owners, is the 5 a.m. wake ups, the staying up till midnight, trying to figure out what a PFS is. Like, they don't see that side of it. And they're like, just like, they see the social media side, right? Where it's like, wow, Tiffany's got all this great stuff. It looks so cool. I'm going to do that. But yeah, I see the impatience, with some of the younger associates, I would say. Not all of them,
Absolutely.
just some of the younger
I feel like the newer graduating dentists are a little bit more patient with the idea of ownership. Where
Yeah, I feel
I
that
used to
too.
hear people say, right? I used to hear people say, "I don't want like 3 practices, do it in a year," and I did that. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not judging. I just I feel like if you're going to do it, don't think that I'm just sitting back with my feet up. Just be prepared to work.
Right.
That's a lot. A lot of people have mentioned to me that their perception is I'm just at home making money. How do I do it? No, it's like
Yeah.
I'm working hard. I'm putting my energy into this to the
Right.
point where I'm in labor doing clin checks or answering texts, and my staff's laughing at me like, "Put your phone down. You're in labor." Like, I'm working, responding to my accountant within 24 hours of giving birth. Hey, didn't you just have a baby? Yes. He's sleeping. I'm responding. I'm working. It's always work.
Yeah, the business owner, when you're building what you're building, it's you're going to be unbalanced for a little while before you become balanced, And I think that's what people struggle with is, well, where do I commit that time? It's supposed to be unbalanced, because you're supposed to dive into work head first when you're growing 9 practices.
Right.
You're gonna be a little bit unbalanced until you get the staff right and the team right underneath you.
Right. It's a lifelong process of instability and being flexible. If that's not something you like for yourself, you like the stability, then you're better off being an associate. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a really nice alternative that people enjoy. You can leave your work at home.
Right.
You can
And
take time off.
Yeah, quality of life thing that people think about. And so all of that should be thought about before entering into practice ownership. Would you agree with that? I mean, on the business side of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what's crazy is as an associate, you don't actually have to have a business or a practice that you bought to become a business owner. Right.
I've seen successful dentists not owning practices doing just that.
Right. So they're the business and their skill set's the business.
Yep.
And that's pretty cool too. So
for sure.
I've seen a couple there.
For sure.
What about?
I feel like we could talk for hours about these things. Now that you got me going, I'm like, I want to talk about this and this and this.
Well, no, listen, I got plenty of topics. Like I said, we're actually gonna be pushing out episodes every couple weeks, like more of a radio show type of setup this season. It'll be fun. So I'm definitely gonna have you back on. So don't worry about that. We'll open that up.
If you want me to be on, I'd be glad to join.
Love it. Well, let's wrap up with this. What about any trends you're seeing right now in dentistry that we should be paying attention to, listeners should be thinking about, or on the business side, or just maybe in dentistry in general?
Yeah, I think in dentistry in general, we're in a time where a lot of people are very aware of the way their teeth look. They're more conscientious of the aesthetic, the appearance. I know that's not our focus as dentists, but there is an aspect of aesthetic, functional dentistry that can work together. You can make people look really good and help them function and preserve the life of their teeth at the same time. So I think we're in an age right now where that's the trend is we want to look better, and the teeth are one of those things now that are being noticed and recognized as an integral part of your face.
Right.
I'd say that's where we're heading.
We could talk about, defining beauty in any sense of the word, internally, externally, but in general, when people feel really good about the way they look, their confidence goes up. They make healthier decisions in general. And just, I'm talking in general with the content they consume from the food that they eat. I mean, it's just an interesting paradigm because internally they naturally just feel better. There's a confidence there. So that positive lens is what's helping them do that. Right. And dentistry could apply to that. I'll tell you a quick story.
We're not just drilling and filling cavities.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
we're not just drilling and filling cavities.
Right.
We're not just drilling and filling cavities anymore. We're talking about prevention and what we can do to help people stay healthy.
Right. And you guys are often the first. No, you guys are the first line of defense often, right? So with not only maintaining health, but preventative care in the whole body. I was saying the story I was telling is, my mother needed some dental implants, finally got them done. I mean, and just her mood changed and she could eat normal. And, it just, she's so happy. And this is over a process of a year.
Wow.
And so you could see how that's all dentistry, man. That is dentistry at its best, helping people feel really good, and like I said, which gives them confidence, which leads to just a healthier overall lifestyle and decision-making because of that positive environment. So.
Right. And if you have that mindset that dentistry is a business, but if you have that mindset that you care about the patients and what you're bringing to your practice, then the business will grow. No matter what mistakes you make, keep your intentions good and the business will be good.
That's true. I can agree on that. We'll end on that good note. Keep your intentions good and the business will come. Take care of others, as they say, and you will be well taken care of. I think Zig Ziglar said that. I'm quoting there, but that's a wrap for today, Tiffany. We'll keep it light, short.
Thank you.
Hope this was packed full of content for those listening. And as always, for those of you who don't know, Tiffany loves to be a mentor. Tiffany, are you still coaching too?
Yeah, I took a little bit of a break, but I'm getting back into that again.
Okay, so I'll leave that optionality to you, and then
if anybody wants to reach out, I'm available, even if it's not on a website anywhere.
Okay, very cool. And obviously, I'm available as well. If you just need to work through that first practice or ninth practice, we'll help you figure that out. Or if you're selling the practice, we'll help you figure that out.
Yeah, never done that.
Right. Well, that's the next conversation, right? It's like, all right, how do we start to divest from the practice? But today was fun, Tiffany. Thank you. For all the Bridge Dental podcast listeners, we're going to put this in the show notes, and we'll get Tiffany's contact info in the show notes. And go back and listen to a previous episode. We've had a blast on that one. She tells an amazing story of how she rebuilt her practices, and it's just an unbelievable comeback story. But so Tiffany, until the next time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back again.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining me again. For all the Bridge Dental podcast listeners, this is Steve Kuza signing off, and we will talk to you very soon. Take care.
Thank you.